All right, thank you for joining. Today we will go through Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple altcoins too as well. Like always, give me 1 minute to get this out to Twitter. Pretty interesting day what we had happen here. Nice little impulse to the upside. Tested the previous week's high once again, right? And then sold off. It still looks like it wants to take out these lows, right? It's very bearish. It's consolidating a little bit, pumped higher, gave it all back. Would not be surprised if price moves lower. Try to do this every day at around 10 to 11 p.m. All right, let's see here. So very interesting day. Let's go ahead and readjust yesterday's high. All right. Yeah, so I wouldn't say I was charting, but I forgot to update this. But that's all right. If we were charting like this, I did end up holding this long, a little bit longer than I wanted. I was just going off of a bullish market structure, kind of aiming for higher highs, right? Like I knew we took out this high, we can get a little rejection, but I was hoping that we would still kind of hold this level a little bit more. This low is being defended, right? This 4-hour low is being defended, which is nice to see. 2-hour, not much is really going on. We're in the middle of the range, right? Yesterday took the highs. This is why it's so important to make sure you mark out the previous day highs and previous day lows, right? Because as you can see, even on Bitcoin, right? It's a perfect example. If you were to mark out yesterday's highs, right, you would have been able to catch this short. You know, Bitcoin was going up very quick, very aggressive, but never closed a 30-minute candle above the previous day high. On the 5-minute, it did close above it, but it didn't close above the last week's high, right? Came back down inside, could have shorted there, and you would have been in a decent short trade, minimal risk, right? 0.5%, with price sitting in currently 1% profit, right? So risk reward still 2-to-1. Very nice trade. Obviously, you would then aim for the previous day lows, or at minimum, at first, the 50% of the previous day's range, right? Which is exactly where it got to. So keep that in mind. So very nice short trade there that happened on Bitcoin. So previous day highs taken once again, and now it's just consolidating in the middle. And it's the weekend, right? This is just weekend price action now. So not much is going to happen over the weekend typically. But what I always like to say is Bitcoin always typically gives you one trade over the weekend. Last weekend, we didn't get a trade, actually. Let me see here. I don't believe we did. No, we kind of did, right? Because Friday it closed. We got a nice little impulse higher. So we actually did. Bitcoin actually pushed up. That doesn't seem right. Hold on a second here. Oh, I did. So it's been bullish last week. But yeah, I see it did actually give you one trade last weekend, right? It was these lows. So Friday, right? Excuse me. So Friday at New York closed. Saturday opened up, impulse higher, very bullish. Created a pivot low here on the 30-minute. Swept the low and just gave you one trade, right? Impulse higher, leading into Monday. And then this is basically just the weekly price action, right, of this week. So the weekends usually give you one trade. This time it happened Sunday midday. So we're going to see what happens again this weekend. So what we want to do is mark out yesterday's highs and lows once again. Also just keeping in mind that it did take out a previous day's highs, right? So excuse me. So with that being said, took out the previous day's highs, came back in, another day started. In my opinion, it should probably try to aim for these lows, but since we do have higher lows on both sides of Wednesday's lows, that is technically a swing low, right, on the daily time frame, which is bullish overall. So with that being said, there is a chance we can come down a little bit, probably fake out these lows, keep defending these lows right here, and push up a little bit higher. All right, if we go drop into a 4-hour time frame, you see that massive rejection candle. Yesterday's lows are kind of the target, right? It seems like it wants to be the target because it took out Wednesday's high. So you know, a lot of people are aiming for the opposite side of the range, right? Which is obviously a very smart area to be aiming for. 50% of the range has already been tested, right? If we just go to swing low to these swing highs, 50%'s already been tested. That would have been a take profit one. And yeah, what's left, right? The .75, the NAV, pretty much still in play. We're just gonna see what kind of trade Bitcoin gives us over the weekend. In my opinion, it's still looking a little bit bearish. Yes, we are making higher lows and higher highs locally, technically, right? Because this was a swing high, came down, swing low, defended that low, came up, took out the high. It's defending this low one more time. Looks like it's curling over a bit. But if these lows stay defended, then yeah, I would expect another push to the upside. But being in the middle of the range, there really is no trade. The one trade that you should be in right now is from a short of these highs. It's the one trade. All right. And as I said, you know, might end up rotating to the bottom of the range, at least taking out these lows, because there's just some resting liquidity before possibly moving higher. But then when you go to like the weekly chart, I can't say that looks bearish, right? I mean, swing lows are all being defended. Nice bullish close for last week. This week, impulsed higher, took the liquidity a little bit, still relative equal highs, and it's just holding up, right? Came back into pretty much like 50% of last week's range. All right, so look at that, almost exact. It came right into 50% of last week's range, almost exact. Bounced off of it and is now slowly going back up, right? So these are levels that it's always important to keep on your chart. Because it helps to build context, right? So tested that 50%, came back up. So that's obviously support, very important support. And also that means there's going to be liquidity below those lows naturally, right? You have support resistance just like that. And when you start seeing this, then yeah, it seems more likely that Bitcoin would come back down here, test these lows one more time before moving higher, right? Like that seems like something that can play out. Now, can it just fall off a cliff a little bit here? Yeah, sure it can. But right now, the level to watch is definitely 89.5, right? We want to see what happens at these lows. So no trade at the moment if you are looking to trade Bitcoin. And I'm sure this is going to also lead into very similar price action for Ethereum, right? See if we can get some more people in here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a few minutes here to look at Ethereum. All right, so the other day we were up here. I was saying if you were being aggressive, you could go along with a stop loss below this swing low. if you were to listen to me, you would have been in the red a little bit right now. Not much, less than 0.5%. But I was really expecting this to happen, right? Price to come down, sweep the lows, and impulse higher. And it pretty much did almost that, right? Like it front ran that level, did not take the liquidity, but it bounced off the 618. It's basically riding this trend line. I still would like one little push down to enter to then go long. Like that just seems like the best trade for sure when it comes to Ethereum, because it is holding this trend line, this very nice trend line. Look how beautiful it is holding this trend line, right? This little curl that happens looks like it's beginning to curl up once again, right? This could be the beginning phase of the expansion to the upside, right? Very possible. So in my opinion, Ethereum does look very nice. Let's go ahead and look at the weekly. Same thing with Bitcoin, right? Close the week out very bullish. Daily holding this level very well. It's actually very nice on the daily. Very, very nice. And we just got to keep on zooming in here, right? Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. So yeah, not much else to really say with Ethereum. It looks very bullish, holding support, flipped resistance into support. Not a bad area to long, stop loss below the lows. If we lose this trend line, then yes, I would be aiming for this weekly pivot, right, or swing low. You also have a weekly demand, which it tested very nicely, right? This is why the supply and demand levels are so important, because if you went to the weekly here, you'll see this weekly demand level got tested almost perfectly, actually pretty much perfectly, right? Like, look at this. The respect and sensitivity at 2634 was spot on to enter along, which would then take you up to 3400 roughly 20-30 days later. So this would be a very long hold, but in the end would have cashed out. All right, so let's see here. That's pretty much it with Ethereum. Let's go ahead and look at Cardano. Right, so this is what we were saying yesterday. Would make sense for it to come up, take the highs, right? Short and aim for the lows. So you would technically have been stopped out if the stop loss was placed here. Even here, you would have just gotten stopped out. So this is the thing with cryptos, these wicks could get you, right? So sometimes people like to put deep stop losses, but it doesn't want to be too far. You know, this is already pushing the limits at 2.5%. So this would have probably just been a trade where you just took the L, right? I was saying that you are at the bottom of the range, but it's still a smart short trade because you're inside of this internal range. You could take the short up here and then place your stop loss above the highs. And let's just go to the 4 hour to see if there was a 4 hour swing high, which would make the most sense. So if that was a swing high, you'd have still got you would have still gotten stopped out right there, right? Maybe you put it a little bit above that, right? And then just that little bit more above is what would have saved you. And you would have still been in a short trade aiming for the downside. So sometimes you don't want to keep it exactly at the level. You want to keep it a couple dollars higher, right? And that little bit of a difference is what would have saved somebody on a short trade if you were trading this range. So overall idea is still intact. Expecting price to come down, take these lows, even take these lows, test this support, right? Which was resistance, flipped into support before continuing higher, which would then kind of line up with the Ethereum price action, right? Not this one, but the one where it's like this, right? That seems like it would line up nicely with Cardano. All right. And then next we have, let's see here. Take a look at Solana. I think I went over that before. It took these lows, went higher, was aiming for these highs, but it definitely slowed down. So on the daily, all these lows are taken. I could actually remove that. I think that was a monthly swing low. All right, so yeah, it took that. Just trying to make a pivot right now. For the weekly, it already closed above. Right, came down, swept the liquidity not once but twice, and is now impulsing higher. So this is just still the next best target. This is technically a daily demand. Could we come back down to that level? Yeah, maybe. It's so bright when I do it this way. On this computer, it is extremely bright. But yes, so it can possibly come down, make its way down back into the demand zone. Would not be surprised. Crypto does stuff like that before then going back up, right? Almost similar to like what happened here. Went up, came down, faked out the highs, and continued down. So for Solana, the target is still at $147. Locally on the daily time frame, it is still a little bit bearish, right? It went up, made a swing high, came down, made a swing low, possibly might make another swing high here. So it's a higher high, lower low, lower high, possibly another lower low. If it goes to the 4 hour, you'll see a little bit better. And yeah, just gotta see what happens here, because right now it is technically trading within another range, right? Let me go ahead and put my range there. Just to make things a lot cleaner. All right, so again, just like Bitcoin, no trade to be made. You want to see it at least come back down, test these lows, take liquidity, gain a little bit of strength, build value back inside, and then you aim for the opposite side, right? And if it comes up here first and we see weakness, then yeah, we go and aim for the lows, possibly even this demand. So that's it, folks. Thank you for watching. like and subscribe. I'm going to try to do this every day at 10 p.m. And yeah, just got to keep charts very simple. Mark your highs and lows. Be patient for these levels to be tested. And then you trade based on the reaction. And it really is that simple sometimes. So thank you for joining. Take care. And until next